What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the BookMine Academy. In today's video, we're talking about should you be buying acceptable condition copies on Amazon? Of course, I'm joined with my good friend and co-founder of BookMine, Victor Gagos. What's going on, man?
Hey, Joji, how's it going? Excited about talking about acceptable books. We get this question all the time. So
all the time.
Excited to dig into it.
It's kind of like the first question people ask before anything else is like, do you buy acceptable condition copies? So we're going to dive into it. We're going to look at high school books, college books, coffee table books, and tell you that there's a little bit of nuance, but it's just kind of common sense, but we still want to walk you through it.
Let's go.
All right, everybody. So we're here on the BookMine dashboard, and I couldn't help but see this gold book. Victor, what rating does it have? What BookMine score does it have?
It has a score of a 10, our highest score. Like literally, we just ran into this book, right? Like just seconds ago, right? We're like, let's look at BookMine. Let's check it out. Let's see what's on here. And there's a 10 of a book.
Great price, extremely short supplies, sell out very likely. And let's go ahead and open this book on Amazon. So right off the bat, Victor, is this, I think it makes a lot of sense to figure out like what the book is. Is it a high school book? Is it a college book? Is it a coffee table book? Is it a seasonal book? So what would you say from first impressions from looking at it?
So this is a college, that's not a college book. This is a coffee table book, right? This is the book that people want to collect and keep in their own bookshelves.
Yeah. And so this actually came out in 2004. Always like just looking at the publication date to see how long it's been out, see if it's been relevant. You can look at the Keepa graph. What is this Keepa graph clearly showing us over the last year, Victor?
It's a high profit, high selling book, right? It's selling quite often at really high prices.
And what's really fascinating is this is the importance of Amazon out of stock. This book, for whatever reason, even though Amazon was selling it for $8 and it was selling pretty well, you can clearly see that when Amazon eventually did go out of stock, this book consistently, like Victor is saying, has been selling for over $100. And you can actually see that it just now got listed at $84. And so one of the reasons why this is such a good, obviously we'd probably buy the book, but what we want to say here to start off first is feedback rating. So we want to talk to us a little bit about feedback rating and how that impacts whether or not you would buy an acceptable condition copy.
Yeah. So let's just say if this was a seller that had this book in acceptable condition and the seller had the same 99% feedback, I would buy it. Right? Because what I'm looking for when I'm buying a book is a book that is at least acceptable condition, like a book I know that I can be able to sell. And so somebody who's selling this book at whatever price they're selling at, but at 99%, I know I'm at least going to get an acceptable copy.
Right. It means that they've at least successfully advertised the condition and quality of their book in most cases, right? Because people will definitely leave you bad reviews on Amazon. And one little tip is you can always click there on their name here on the offers page, and that will bring you to their profile. And you can actually look at some of the reviews. It's actually a great tip. If you see someone who has lower feedback, you can be like, well, why do they have lower feedback? And then you might come here, Victor, and see a bunch of 1 stars or 2 stars. And it's like, I bought this book in new condition and it came with coffee stains on it or something like that, right? So it's a good little tip there.
A lot of times when I look at the feedback like that and I click on it and I realize when I'm reading it and some of the people actually put that they received the wrong book, that's usually a red flag for me. I don't want to get the wrong book to me, right? I at least want the right book being sent to me. So when I see quite a bit of people saying that, I don't buy from that seller.
Yeah. Also, something that you'll see a lot, especially with people with lower feedback, is they'll say like, I never received the book. It's been a month.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's a bad sign. So the first tip that we have for you when it comes to buying acceptable condition copies is that we generally would only buy acceptable condition copies, right? And it's just a general rule of thumb, right? It's not like it's ironclad and we fall 100% of the time, but generally we would only buy an acceptable condition copy for somebody who has a high feedback rating. Certainly, Victor, you would consider 99% a high feedback rating, right?
Oh yeah,
like
really high feedback rating.
Like how low would you be willing to go on that feedback rating for an acceptable copy?
An acceptable, I probably get down to as low as 89%, and that's a book that's a really good deal. Like something like this, I would have probably still bought from this seller if it was down to 89%. Right. But if I could pick between some acceptable and good condition books and stuff like that, and this person had 89%, if I had other choices, I wouldn't definitely, it wouldn't be my first choice. But on this particular deal, on this example, I would have gone probably down to 89.
Yeah, and in a good example, like going back to what Victor said, is if the deal is an amazing deal, right, you might be willing to stretch that margin and go a little bit lower. So you might be willing to go down 92% or 89% and grab an acceptable condition copy. All right, so we're back here on the BookMine dashboard. Just the book above it looks really great. You can see there's some seasonality here in August, September, and also some seasonality in January. We just recently, in the last month, added the 1-year Keepa snapshot, which makes looking at seasonality much easier. So we can clearly tell this is a college book. You can even see that we've actually classified this book correctly as a college book. But you can actually see it's in the off season right now, right? It's not August, September, and it's not January when people need this book for college. So this is when this book you would expect it to kind of dip down into its valley, right? So if we go and open up this listing, look at the Keeper graph, what we would then do is go, okay, well, let's look at the orders page. We open up the Amazon page, and what we noticed on this page, Victor, was what?
That we saw a Goodwill on this listing. So a Goodwill with actually really high ratings. So a really good feedback for the seller. So it's definitely a book that, although it's in acceptable condition, we have found, both of us have found, that if we buy a book from a Goodwill that have a really good feedback, that a lot of times we tend to actually get a better quality book than is advertised.
The Goodwills, at least, that have high feedback ratings, like definitely 95% or higher, and especially the ones with like 97, 98, 99%. Those Goodwills tend to under-promise and over-deliver, which is honestly something that you should be doing too as a seller, right? It's good to always kind of under-promise and, the customer be happy because they receive something slightly better. And one key indicator is you can always, again, click on that seller name, and often you'll read their comments and you can say book was in great shape. You might even see often like, as described or even better than described. So look,
better than
brand new, better than described. So there you go, right?
Yeah.
So this might have been a good condition copy and came like new, right? But this is absolutely a book that we would be buying in acceptable condition from a Goodwill. This one that has good feedback rating.
And college students aren't as picky when they're getting a book. They just want to be able to read the text, right? So even if this book came in as acceptable, we wouldn't get a return, or more than likely we wouldn't get a return from a college student. And so since this is a college book, I'm less picky on those type of books. But looking at the sellers here, I would have definitely ordered from that Goodwill seller and, sent it on.
Absolutely. And so here's a good example. Like, even though this copy is more expensive and we want to buy this copy because it's more expensive than what we could buy it for, this is like imagine if this was the same price and you see some of 60% feedback rating. Well, they've only got 10 ratings, so it's small sample size, but still, that's not the best sign. Again, you could always kind of look at what their feedback rating is. It looks like, hey, they've actually gotten some pretty decent feedback here in the past. And you can kind of see, receive incorrect product. You can see there are some issues that they've had in the past. Maybe they've kind of turned it around as a seller. But the fact of the matter is, when you see a low feedback rating, especially that low, it's kind of like a run for the hills, right, Victor?
Right. I wouldn't buy from that seller, even if it was a really good deal.
Yeah,
that's too low. Yeah.
All right, Victor, so we're back here on BookMine. I went ahead and just clicked the book type filter to go to high school because we want to share with you some important ideas when it comes to acceptable condition copies, between the differences of like high school books, college books, coffee table books, and so forth. So here's clearly a high school book. The way that we could easily tell that, Victor, is just looking at the Keeper graph. Like, what's the giveaway, Victor, that this is probably a high school book just by looking at the Keeper graph?
Yeah, the way you can tell here is that almost all of its demand, almost all the green drops are happening there in July, August, and September, and not so much in January. So when you see a book like that, you can definitely tell that's a high school book.
Yeah, you can see in January, it looks like in January may not even have sold at all, right? But if you look back at 1,700 days, you can see when that sales run gets really low, that stereotypical U always happens at the same time. Right. And even though this book does have a bit of a rising offer count, I still think that this is a book that could do really well. It's right around $13 plus shipping. It got up as high as the 60s and even was selling into the hundreds as well. I could this book is still buy boxing at 50, even though it's down here at like, $13 plus shipping. So it's still a book that I think is going to do really well in a book that I'd be buying. But let's talk about acceptable condition copies in this context of a high school book. Are you more or less likely to buy an acceptable condition copy if it's a high school book versus like if it's a coffee table book or something?
Yeah, or even a Christmas book, right? So for me, I am definitely willing to buy an acceptable copy of a high school book because what most of my customers for high school books are school districts, and what they're trying to do is just replenish their stock of books that are too badly beaten up and just basically replace those copies. So all they're really looking for is just a workable copy. An acceptable copy is fine with them. All they're just trying to add it and make a full set. And so on those type of high school books, acceptable books, I'm buying those all day.
I can tell you guys from experience. I'm a high school teacher right now. Yeah. A lot of the books in my room, the chemistry books, are pretty trash. Like, they're pretty bad. Some of them I'm surprised we started using. But yeah, I mean, like Victor said, the schools are placing the book, the students buying it because they lost it. I mean, they're not expecting an immaculate condition book. So in this case, like Victor says, I'm much more willing to kind of maybe, go down a little bit on the feedback rating if it's an amazing deal, because again, I'm expecting the book to come in acceptable condition. But the point here is that you should be thinking a little bit about the difference between like a coffee table book versus a high school or college book. High school and college books, somebody needs it for a reason other than that they actually want it for themselves. For high school students, college students are buying the book because they need it for what they're doing. They're not necessarily needing it because they want it as if they were somebody who's really into woodworking or something, is really into this niche, and they want this beautiful condition copy because they're really passionate about the subject, right? That person wants the book because they want the book. These students don't really want the book because they want the book. They're just buying the book because they need the book.
And a lot of times they're just looking for the cheapest copy, right? They just want something that's workable and that they can use it for the semester or for the school year.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, everybody, once again, back here on BookMine. And now for the book type, I went ahead and clicked winter. We're looking now for, in this case, Christmas books. We saw this one that looks pretty great. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. You can again see from the Kibograph that this has seasonality at what time, Victor?
Pretty easy to tell. All December, this book really spikes. So November, December, this book really spikes really well.
Right. And you can see that sales rank. You can see that here on the Kibograph as well. Way more heartbeats, way more sales rank drops in November, December, like we'd expect. And we can see that use price go up. So now this use price for now sitting around $11 plus shipping, which looks to be like a pretty good deal. You can see every single year, this book has basically gone up to 30 to $40 pretty much every year since 2013. So, I would expect that probably going to do the same thing in 2025, Victor, right?
Probably going to happen again. Yeah. And safe to say.
And for people who were, by the way, a little bit skeptical of whether or not it was still going to happen, if Christmas was going to happen, I'm just letting you know that Victor and I shot our first video together when he blew my mind about, Christmas books. I think it was back in March or April. I think it was actually April of 2023.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of people super hyped up about it. And guess what happened, Victor? You could have bought it April, May, June, July, August, September, even up until November, and it still popped. Still did well, right? So I'm assuming that it's probably still going to do the same thing here in 2025. But again, what we're going to do is actually look at the offer page here. So let's go ahead and click on the Amazon page and let's go and look at the offers here. So what we want to talk about here with Christmas books is that there are certain Christmas books where you probably want to be a little bit more weary about what the condition is. And can you give us some examples of like what kind of Christmas books?
Yeah. So on Christmas books, people are trying to, share with the family a book like this, right? They're wanting to read it or use it as a family event. So a lot of times these books are like pop-up books. So you want to make sure on those type of books that they're at least in good condition or better, because you want the pop-up to actually work. Or if a book is like a recording book, is a lot of times these books are like recording books, right, with a little battery in them. So you also want to make sure that those books are in good condition. So I tend to want to look for good condition books or better on Christmas books. And usually, especially right now where we're like in June, June's a great time to be buying a lot of Christmas books. There's very little demand and there's a ton of good and very good copies just sitting there at very cheap prices.
Yep, especially if the book is going to come with a CD, like Victor said.
Yeah,
it's actually a great sign if the seller actually says, "Hey, the CD is included." In this case, say it's unused, which is a good sign. But yeah, definitely trying to be probably closer to the good condition would be better. Now, just to let you know, we are coming out with a version 2 of the Christmas list, which in mid-June sometime is where we're going to launch that. Again, priority is going to be given to BookMine members, and we're really excited about that. But on BookMine right now, there's a bunch of Christmas books that you could go buy. So, with that said, we looked at a high school book, we looked at a college book, we looked at like a coffee table book, we looked at, a bunch of different books and gave you our idea between acceptable and good. And what we'll say is it comes down to experience, Victor, right? Like sometimes you buy a book in good condition from a seller with good feedback rating and it comes back acceptable condition, right? And then sometimes you buy an acceptable condition copy and it comes out and it's like it's brand new, right? It's kind of all over the place, to be honest with you, but there are a few simple rules that you all could follow out there to, in most cases, come out ahead. And that is, right, making sure that you're using your judgment and if you can, buying the better condition copies, making sure you're buying those copies if they are acceptable, especially from people with higher feedback rating rather than people from lower feedback rating, right? Don't be so hard on yourself with acceptable condition copies for college and high school books. Right. That's something that, those students, again, are not expecting it to be in immaculate condition because it's not like they want it, they just need it, right? There's a difference between wanting it and needing it.
Yep.
Right? And then remember, for coffee table books, maybe be a little bit more stringent on condition. Realize that those niche books, those books that, people really want for their collection, or books that, people actually have desire to showcase on their coffee table, like they probably wanted to be in a little bit better condition. But despite all that, Victor, what we still say is just buy books, right? Go out and buy books. That matters more. Don't sit here like, it's 91%, 92. Do it. Just buy it, right? You'll learn through the experience. And what I can say is, having sold over 4,000 books just in the last year, you get very few returns. And I do buy a significant number of acceptable condition copy books. And what about you, Victor? I mean, do you buy
same thing? Yeah, I buy acceptable copy books. Of course, my goal is just to make sure I get a copy that I can at least sell back, right? Sell to my new customers. Yeah. And that's all I'm trying to do. So I actually buy and sell a ton of acceptable books, and you shouldn't just totally discard all acceptable books. So it's a category that you do need to dig into and start buying some.
Yep. And a lot of my good condition books in my inventory were bought in acceptable condition. Came from Goodwill, seller with great feedback, under promises, over delivers, which is great. And by the way, we do have prep centers. I use Central Virginia Prep. Victor uses Little Owl. No. And they're the ones that are inspecting the book anyways. They're the ones who can have a better idea of what the condition is, because they can actually see it and flip to the pages and look at it. But those are reputable prep centers, and I haven't had any issues. I don't have anyone complain about the condition unless it's some discrepant event that's actually like Amazon's fault, where like the binding's completely ripped apart. Where it's like, okay, well, obviously my prep center didn't let that go through. So in this video, we just want to show you that, hey, yeah, you should be buying acceptable condition copies, but there's some things you should look out for. We hope you guys enjoyed this BookMine Academy video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Sound good?
All right. Sounds great. All right. Bye.